Yo, what's good, people? We are here with part 53 of Condensed Chaos by Hines. Witches, wizards, warlocks, magicians, magus, magi. Let us get into pattern recognition. Now, as we move through life, we tend to develop habituated patterns of thought and behavior. One area of experience where these patterns can be dysfunctional is in relationships. For example, if you have become used to an open relationship with a partner, you might find a partner's desire that you become monogamous a restriction upon your sense of freedom. It is common to take habituated patterns of adaptation and survival across relationships, often to the detriment of new situations. Obviously, identifying these patterns is useful, particularly as we tend to hold on to them without realizing that they are no longer viable. Obsessional demons. We are bound by our own past, bound to repeat patterns, programs written long ago, flowcharted in infant's crabbed hand, meshed like kitten pulled wool, a language of critical moments in our personal histories. Years later, a gap opens in the world, and creatures of free will and freedom that we think we are, our sudden vulnerability surprises us. Caught off guard, we pause, and in that silence, ancient innocent fingers deep within us pluck at strings, so that we jerk awkwardly in the grip of self-spawned monsters of the mind, obsessions. Defense mechanisms. The more value that we place on upholding a particular emotional pattern, the more likely it is that all ambiguous signals will be perceived as supporting it. Evidence which counters it will most likely be overlooked and rationalized into a more malleable form. Conflict arises when dissonance occurs between desires and existing mental constructs. Have you ever feared the strength of your own desires? To cope with such conflicts, a variety of defense mechanisms can be adopted. Number 1. Aggression. A typical response to frustrated desire and loss of control, loss of devouring dreams. We can direct it at the source of our frustration or direct it onto others. Number 2. Apathy. Loss of control, loss of faith and self-worth. The machine stops. Number 3. Regression. Adult, who? Me? A return to a childlike mind. Cry hard enough and someone will come and comfort us. Perhaps we have learned that through tears we can control others. Number 4. Sublimation. In other words, putting a brave face on it, redirecting the energy into a more acceptable form. But demons are cunning. Kick them down the front stairs and they will come sneaking around the back, waiting with spider calm until you leave the door of your mind ajar. The last part, intellectualization. Displacing feelings with words. A quick lie for the aesthetic becomes a fast buck for the lay analyst. Such strategies are normal. That is until they become obsessive. A locked up loop, automatic as breathing, out of control. Fantasy. Fantasy is the cornerstone of obsession, where imagination is trussed up like a battery farm chicken. Catharsis eventually becomes catastrophic. Walter Mitty lives in all of us, in varying sized corners. We use starter fantasies to weave meaning into a new situation, maintainer fantasies to prop up a boring task, and stopper fantasies to persuade ourselves that it's better not to. A fantasy has tremendous power, and in a period of high anxiety, we can imagine 1,000 outcomes, good and bad, but mostly good, of what the dreaded and hoped for moment will bring us. The fantasy exists in a continual tension between the desire to fulfill it and the desire to maintain it, to keep from losing it. Of course, any move to realize it threatens its existence. A closed loop is the result, shored up for our favorite defense mechanisms. whipped on by fear of failure and lust of result. The obsession clouds all reason, impairs the ability to act, makes anything secondary to it seem unimportant. It's a double-bind tug-of-war. The desire to maintain the fantasy may be stronger than the desire to make it real. In classical occult terms, I am describing a thought form, a monster bred from the darker recess of mind, fed by psychic energy, clothed in imagination and nurtured by umbilical cords which twist through years of growth. We all have our personal tunnels of set in our ways through habit and patterns piling on top of each other. The thought form rides us like a monkey, its tail wrapped firmly about the spine of a self lost to us years ago, an earlier version threshing blindly in a moment of fear, pain, or desire. Thus we are formed, and in a moment of loss we feel the monster's hot breath against our backs, its claws digging into muscle and flesh. We dance to pull the strings that were woven years ago, and in a lightning flash of insight, or better yet, the gentle admonitions of a friend, we may see the lie, the program. We're going to stop it there, and we will be back with more Condensed Chaos. What we're going to touch on, we get into breaking bounds, many selves, the neutral self, freedom of belief. We got good things ahead. I'll see you all soon.